The opening audio got corrupted and there's a screaming child at my background, so yeah. This is Puto and this is a small tutorial for correction layers on Clip Studio. I will also show how I use them on my drawings. I hope these were helpful. Lego.
Hello, let's talk about all the different color correction methods that you can use to make your drawings pop, different, and basically give it a new feel to it. So let's go here on layer, correction layer, and you can see here there's brightness and contrast, hue, saturation, luminosity, posterization, and so on and so forth. This all seems so familiar because let's not confuse it with what we have here. On edit, tonal correction, there's brightness and contrast, hue, saturation, luminosity. Basically, it's the same thing. So what's the difference? All of the adjustments under tonal corrections are locked on the image. You cannot edit them once you finalize your edit. You cannot go back to the previous adjustment. You can just go back to the history of it and start everything from the very beginning. Now, let's look at correction layer. Adjustments under correction layers are editable and flexible. You can go back to them, tweak them as you see fit. Basically, edit them according to your preferences. The moment you choose any correction layer, a special layer will be made on the Layer tab under the name of whatever correction that you chose. This is your adjustment layer. You can see two thumbnails on that adjustment layer. The first one is the correction that you chose. To access this, just double-click the thumbnail and you can edit your previous adjustment. On the second thumbnail is a plain white icon. This is your mask already attached to the adjustment. Everything that is white is getting affected by the adjustment attached to it. To remove the mask or adjustment on a certain area, just grab an eraser and erase the area that you don't want to get any adjustments on. To put back the mask, grab any brush, make sure your color is on white and paint back the parts you want to get affected by the correction. Remember that this works the same as layers. Blending mode works on them, same with opacity and clip below layer. You can group them up to make your layer tab organized. Make sure you unpass through though. But that's just my preference. You can do whatever you want. Now that we know what are correction layers, let's talk about the different adjustments under it and I'll show you when to use them. So let's start with brightness and contrast. First, go to layer, correction layer, brightness and contrast. Or you can go here to the layer itself, right click, new correction layer, brightness and contrast. Everyone's already familiar with this. If you increase the brightness, you increase the tone of the drawing. But one thing to keep in mind though, when you get sliders like this that deals with tone adjustments, left side is always the dark area, right side is the light area. Okay, now for contrast. Self-explanatory here. Increase the contrast and you increase the difference of light and dark. Light area becomes lighter, dark area becomes darker. Now, slide that to the left, the contrast and all of the contrast dies down. Slide it down even further and the light and dark area turns gray. So, what kind of editing are you looking for? Now, for this one, this image is too bright. Let's make a new correction layer, brightness and contrast. If I increase the brightness, he almost turns white. If I lower it down, it gets darker. Well, what do I want? I want the colors to die. Just a little bit. So let's lower down this contrast and you see here at the bottom of the shirt the dark area is lessened. So let's just increase the brightness just a little bit and there we go, subtle changes. Still, it depends on your preferences. I love dull colors, almost dead colors for my adjustment, but your preference is definitely different than mine. Feel free to choose what you want. And okay. Next is hue, saturation, and luminosity. Basically, this adjustment is for fixing basic color issues, change colors, change the saturation of an image, and a small light tweaking. So let's right click the layer here, new correction layer, hue, saturation, and luminosity. First slider is the hue. This changes the colors of the overall image. Saturation adjusts the vibrancy of the image. Again, the left side is the dark area, and going to the right is the bright area. But we won't go that far because it hurts. Okay, now next is luminosity. This changes the brightness of the whole image. Go to the farthest left and the whole image turns black. Go to the right and the image turns white. I sometimes use this adjustment for two reasons. One is basic tone correction and of course to change colors. For this example, I want this image to pop. I want the saturation to be out there. So of course, the basic thing to do is just to increase the saturation. But you can see here, as I increase the saturation, the background is also eating up the adjustment, and I don't want that. Some would just want to use mask to fix the issue, but simple things, I just want to use simple solutions. Go to blend mode and hit colors, lower it down for a bit, and just like the word itself, color blend modes only attack the colors of the image and leaving the bright area somehow like the way it was before. You can try whatever you fancy. Soft light, overlay, darken, and colors are my usual go-to when I want the image to pop. And now, double click the adjustment icon and edit it as you like. Change the colors for a bit. And there it is, before and after.
This is what it looks like if you set the saturation on maximum with this blending mode, by the way, just in case you like really colorful things. You woo.
Now let's change the colors. I have this image right here and I want the fur to be maybe pink. So let's go here, right click the layer, new correction layer, hue and saturation luminosity. Go to the hue slider and just pick the color that you want. I want pink, so let's go here and click OK. Now, before anything else, I want to change the blend mode first because I feel something is off with the shadows. And I will go again to my favorite, which is color blend modes. You can see here that the shadows have darkened, almost matching the color that I chose. And now we fix the image. Click the white icon or the mask next to the adjustment one. Grab an eraser and just erase the area that you don't want to get affected. As I erase, you can see here that the black area or the background is not really getting affected by the adjustment. That makes things so much easier for me. And I just need to erase the areas inside. The dog is barking. And now you're done. If you're unsatisfied with the color, just double click the adjustment layer icon and choose whatever you fancy. And that's it. Next is posterization. Go to layer, new correction layer, posterization. From the word itself, poster, this mimics the style of the mass-produced posters that were made back in the days, in which posters can only take so little colors. If you lower the slider, you get 7 colors, 8 if you include the white. And if you increase the gradients, you get more and more colors. Just a little something that I noticed. Let's delete this and make a new one. You can see that when you make a new posterization, it starts at 8. My guess is that this adjustment also mimics 8-bit images. Same reason as those mass-produced posters. 8-bit images can only take up to 256 colors, while regular images, or what we have nowadays, 24-bit images, can take up to 16 million of colors. Another thing that I noticed, by the way, some people says that posterization gives you a GIF-like effect. This is a GIF image. If we go to the properties of this image, it's an 8-bit image. GIFs can only take a maximum of 256 colors. Okay, quick recap. Posterization is an adjustment or an effect which reduces the amount of colors that your image has. Okay, so where do you use this adjustment or effect? I usually use this adjustment when I want to stylize something, but I usually mix it with another adjustment. Example is this image. I want something going on. So let's insert a new layer, new correction layer, posterization, and let's choose whatever that gives us some flare on the shirt. And click OK. Now you can see this made the dark areas more darker, and I don't want that, but I want the effect to stay. I usually just pick a tone curve, I will talk about this later, and just adjust the tones so that the dark areas lighten. When I'm done adjusting, just click OK, and then go back to the posterization layer. If you zoom in, you can see that the face is too bright. It's too chalky actually. And let's just grab an eraser tool, soft brush, set the density at low because I'm just using a mouse, and just erase the hard edges. And there we go. Okay, before and after. Next is reverse gradient. This is actually my favorite and my go-to adjustment every single time. So let's go to layer, new correction layer, reverse gradient. And it just inverts the colors. So where do you use this? Or where do I use this? I usually go to blend modes right here and choose either soft light. Let's lower the opacity for a little bit so you can see. Sometimes I use soft light, glow dodge, or overlay. I'm gonna use overlay on this one, and that's it. I love this adjustment because it gives me anime vibes. Anime looks colorful, but they actually use dull colors, and that's where my obsession with dull colors started. That's it. Oh no, here we go. Let's go. Okay, now let's talk about everyone's favorite, level correction and tone curves. There are so many arguments that these two are basically the same. Well, they are somehow right. Hey, this is level correction and this is tone curves. So let's look at level correction first. Upon opening, you will get this window which has the RGB menu, input and output. The input area or the histogram area, it controls the shadows, the dark areas, the halftones, the middle tones, and highlights or the lighter areas. Output on the other hand, like I said before, the left area is the dark side, right is the brighter side. Grab the left slider to the right, the overall image turns to white. Grab the right slider to the left, everything turns dark. RGB menu, red controls all the red and cyan colors, green controls all the green and magenta, blue controls all the blues and yellows. Always remember, the opposite of RGB is CMYK. What is K? That's the black. If you look at your color tab right here, drag all these reds, greens, and blue slider to the opposite side, you get cyan, magenta, and yellows. Okay, here we go. Now, let's go to the tone curves. You get the RGB menu, output on the side of the graph, and input on the histogram. The difference, you get a curve right here, but basically works the same as level correction. Clicking the curve on the upper area right here represents the highlights or the light area. To delete this, just drag this point to the outside of the histogram. Now, the lower graph represents the shadows or the dark areas, and the middle represents the halftones or the middle tones. The point at the end of the curve represents the brightness of the image. If you lower the upper end of the point, everything goes dark. If you increase the lower point, everything goes white. RGB menu, red represents red and cyan, green represents greens and magenta, blue represents blues and yellows. So, are they the same? Yes and no. Everything that you can do in level corrections, you can do it in tone curves. But there are things in tone curves that you cannot do in level correction. Level correction lets you edit the shadows, halftones, and highlights. It's like the basic of tone editing. While on tone curves, it lets you edit the shadows, halftones, and highlights while tweaking those three major points, adding more details and flexibility, giving you more freedom for your adjustment. This is more like the complex and detailed adjustment tool, but once you learn to use it, this tool is just perfect. Again, Color correcting and adjustment doesn't have to be drastic. Subtle changes is okay. Now, let's go to color balance. Let's right-click this layer here, new correction layer, color balance. Upon opening it, you will see at the color balance the three primary colors, RGB, red, green, and blue. On the opposite of it, it's CMYK, cyan, magenta, and yellow. And under the gradient balance are the shadow tab, half tone tab, and highlights tab. Let's uncheck keep brightness for now. I will explain this later. Shadow tab, adjust the dark areas. Half tone, adjust the midtones. Highlights, adjust the light areas. If you remember the previous topic, this is kind of the same as that, because everything that you can do in color balance, you can achieve it in tone curves. So let's right click right here, new correction layer, tone curves. Go to the RGB menu, make a point at the middle and drag it up, and this is your midtones. And the same as before, everything on the left is the dark side, this is your shadow, and everything on the right is your light side, this is your highlights. On the opposite of this curve is the opposite of the RGB. Red turns cyan, green turns magenta, and blue turns yellow. So basically, it's just the same. Maybe the difference is the keep brightness option? Maybe? If we check that, the brightness or the original light areas retain that luminosity. So, we can't do that in tone curve? Actually we can. Go to the tone curve correction layer, change the blending mode, change it to colors. What this does is, it only affects the colors, leaving the light areas as close to the original as possible. And we basically get the same effect as color balance. So what is even the purpose of color balance if you can do the same thing in tone curves? For me, this is just my opinion, I like having my own adjustment specifically for colors. With values that I can see numerically, I can edit them as precisely as I want them to be. Shadows, halftone, and highlights already labeled. Sliders just make things easier. I usually use this adjustment if I feel like the characters aren't blending with each other or their background seems to be out of touch with the character. Also, this is a small, like Instagram filter. On the halftones tab, move the slider a little bit to the reds, and another slider, move it a little bit to the yellows. This make warm colors. And another, move the slider to cyan, and move a little bit to blues. This makes cold colors. That's it. Next up is binarization. Right click the layer, new correction layer, binarization. From the word itself, binary or two, this adjustment turns any multi-tone image into a two-color image, turning the light areas white and the dark areas black. The lower the value of the threshold, the smaller the values of black, increase the slider, and the black increases as well. So, where to use this? I find this really helpful when I want to deepen the details of my drawings. For example, this image, the flowers are too flat. I don't want to increase the contrast, the colors of the flowers might change along with it. So I go to layer, new correction layer, binarization, and I lower this for the details that I need. When I'm satisfied, just change the blending mode to multiply, lower the opacity to match the other shadows, maybe grab an eraser, click the mask icon on the binarization adjustment layer, and erase a few dark areas that I don't really need, and there we go. Before and after. It's really helpful to highlight those details without damaging any colors. So yeah. Finally, this is our last adjustment. Let's go to layers, new correction layer, gradient map. Upon opening, you will get graded by these gradient sets. Choosing any of these gradient maps replaces the colors of your images. You can choose any of these sets, any of these gradients, or make your own. For now, I will focus on sky gradient sets. So, how do the colors work? For example, let's pick this gradient map with a lot of variation of colors. You can see here above the gradation of the selection. As I said earlier, regarding tones, everything on the left is the dark side, everything on the right is the light side. Everything on the left is the shadows, everything on the right is the highlights. Meaning, black area here represents the shadows. The light yellow at the end represents lights. And if we reverse the gradient, the left side is now yellow, turning the dark areas yellow, and the right side is now black, turning all the light areas black. So, where do you use this? This is an adjustment that gives your drawings a whole new vibe to it. I usually just choose the gradient that I want, change the blending mode to soft light, lower the opacity for a bit, and there we go, before and after. It's like a simple filter. Sometimes I try other blend modes like darken and it gives me like an Instagram effect. And that's it. Okay, here's an example if you have a character but with a night background. Let's go here, go to layer, new correction layer, gradient map. Let's choose this gradient map for a while, then click OK. Make sure you choose your correction layer, clip it to the layer below, and now we only have our character affected by the adjustment. Now go back to the adjustment, double click that icon, and let's make a new gradient map. Let's delete this one for a while, and click create new gradient. Let's put the name to night sky, then click OK. Now let's change the colors. Let's pick the farthest to the left, click this color right here. Let's choose this eyedropper tool, pick the darkest color on the background, then click OK. Now the second color, let's just click this eyedropper on the side and pick our midtones, the center color of our background. Now for the third color, eyedropper, let's pick the lightest color on the background. Then the last color, eyedropper, pick the lightest color again, but let's edit that. Click the color settings and make it lighter. And when you're done, just click OK. Change the blending mode to multiply and lower down the opacity. Now let's add the highlights. Make a new layer, Ctrl Shift N, clip it to the layer below. Let's choose our brush, pick the lightest color on the background, Alt plus drag to get that color. On the color settings, let's make it lighter. And let's just add the highlights at the edge of our character. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can use any brush that you want. I just want to make sure that I highlight the edges, highlight the difference of his clothes, hoodies and shirt, his ears, a little bit to the hair and hands, and that's it. Change the blend mode of the highlights to add glow, lower down the opacity, and we can still edit the correction layer. Just double click the adjustment icon. Now on the gradient map, you can see here, move the farthest left slider a little bit to the right, double click the farthest left area, and we have a new slider tone. Change the colors, let's make it black. This make all of our darkest area black. Make the second farthest dark as well, adjust all the tones, adjust the tones for a bit, and then the farthest right slider, move that to the left, double click the area, and we made a new light slider. Let's change the background to a lighter blue tone. This make all of our lightest area light blue. Tweak it more for a bit, and there we go.
Okay, wait a moment. You can actually stop right here, but I just don't want to because I'm not a fan of vibrant colors even though I have colorful characters, lolxd. You might not like the next adjustment that I would do. I love tell colors and I have the audacity to teach color corrections. Oh my god. This is just my preference. You can do whatever you want, dear. Now let's go back to the video.
One thing that I like to add though, this is just what I do when I work with things like this, like when I change the color of the character to match the background. I still do tone correction afterwards. It helps them blend together even more and color correct the whole thing. So let's make a new layer, new correction layer, tone curves. Let's click OK for now. Make sure that the tone curves is above and it's not clipped to the character. We want the adjustment to affect the whole image. Now just color correct it, and when you're done, just click OK. Let's see here, before and after. You can still tweak the adjustments even more, and actually let's add more. Let's add hues and saturation. Okay, let's click OK for now. Change the layering. I want the hues and saturation to be above the gradient map because I want this adjustment to just support the adjustment below. Then we go back to the hues and saturation, double click the adjustment icon and let's just pick something blue. And then click OK. Change the blending mode to color so that we get those shadows. Lower down the opacity like up to 15 or less. It's just low, but we just need the color support for the gradient map. This is where we started. Then we added a gradient map. Then we added color supports and tone adjustments. Okay, now we're done. This is long, I'm so sorry. But I hope this were helpful.